Well, Gary, a hot debate in the church right now is over social justice. And social justice is a big issue for a lot of young Christians, a lot of people, but especially with the younger crowd. A very important issue for them. But now you've got some others coming forward and saying they're concerned about it because it's very heavily tied to a liberal political agenda and perhaps replacing the gospel in some ways. What are your thoughts on that debate?
Well, there's so much in that question. Replacing the gospel with anything is totally inappropriate and not beneficial by any means to our heart, our life, our behavior, our community, or our church, or anything. So you don't want to do that. But at the same time, the idea of anything being attached to a liberal agenda, this is going to sound terrible, but it doesn't concern me if it's right. If their agenda is biblical, then go for it. If it's not biblical, then throw it out. So I don't want to start with looking at people's agenda and then trying to fit the biblical mode within that. I'd rather start with the biblical understanding and then look at where different activities, agendas can fit in with what the gospel is trying to promote. So the idea of social justice for me is one that's very dear to my heart and something I would hate to escape. And if somebody from a different worldview were to try to adopt some of those things that we might be doing in the church, then bless God, I would encourage them to do so.
When you say social justice, what are we talking about?
Well, break it down to the simplest form. Social is our community, our society, and justice is doing things just the way God would have us do them. The root word of justification itself is being made just right in the presence of God. We don't make ourselves just right by our actions, our behaviors. That is the grace of God that makes us. And I think that's where the argument that's coming in the church today is coming from, is the debate between what actually justifies us. And so if you look at some of those that are putting a new document forth and asking for pastors and leaders to sign or disagree with this stated document, I think the argument has to do with, well, what is it that actually justifies us? And I believe that's the blood of Jesus Christ, cleanses us from all our unrighteousness. But from that point, and then social justice is what do we do once we are born again? What do we do as Christians? So this argument reminds me a lot of when I first started ministry as a youth pastor, and the teenagers would come up to me, particularly the boys would come up and say, hey, can I still maybe sleep around a little bit or do this little thing here and still be a Christian? It was like, how bad can I get and still claim my justification? I always picture my marriage. I have a marriage covenant, but if I were to come up to my wife and say, hey, is it okay with you if I stare lustfully at other women? It would not negate the covenant that my wife and I have, but it would not be an advisable thing, it would not be a healthy thing. And so this idea of saying we need to remove social justice from the gospel is like me, it's like that youth group person saying, like, can we remove my sexual morality from the gospel? Probably can, but who would want to? I mean, somebody that has the work of the cross being applied to their life is going to want to be like Jesus, and that's going to come out of that. And it's not so much how much can I escape from things that are improper, or how much do I need to do to earn my salvation. It has nothing to do with that. It's once you know Jesus, you want to be like Jesus. You want to love like Jesus. You want to live like Jesus. And the reality of that then is we make an impact on the world. I like to say we make a better world because of what Jesus has done for us. And so social justice, I believe, is an important part of that. And if you make it part of your salvation, you might have gone too far. If you detach it from your walk with Christ, then you've gone too far and fallen off the horse on the other end.
So it sounds like you're saying it is so intertwined with the gospel, with who Jesus Christ is, that if you don't care for widows, if you don't have concern for the poor, there may be something wrong in your walk.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's the Old Testament, the prophets were certainly concerned about social justice. I was just reading this earlier today from Micah chapter 6, verse 8. It says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly before your God." 3 key elements to the Christian life. If you back those up, go backwards, the humility is I need the cross of Jesus Christ to save me. But then that helps me then engage, and moving backwards again, to love mercy. I love the idea of helping people. Well, if you're going to love mercy, then how are you going to do that? Well, there's going to have to be some justice involved. It's not just being kind or helping. There's no Christian that would disagree that there's an orphan or there's a hungry person, let's feed them or give them, that orphan, a place to live. Now, when it comes to some of these other social justice issues of race or gender or feminism, those type of things, then the church gets more divided because you're moving from humility, mercy, to some of these issues of justice. All three of these are integral to our walk with Christ. And I would say I have a problem with people that try to, I don't know, a lot of these people, please forgive me if I'm sounding a little bit harsh here, but a lot of those people are putting these documents out are ivory tower professors who are sitting back there discussing theology and have nothing to do with the poor on the street, have nothing to do with the issues of race in inner cities. Not all of them, but I'd say a number of them are doing that. Some of them are suburban churches that are working with affluent people and sort of armchair quarterbacks looking at society and saying, let's do this or let's not do that. I would much rather us just get involved in helping people. Leave the debate to the scholars, those of us who know Jesus, and not that they don't know Jesus, but those of us who just want to live a simple Christian life and love Jesus. Let's just get out there and do good. Let's help people. Let's show mercy and kindness and do justice. And that would involve caring for the widow and the orphan, for the outcast, for the Samaritan who's been beaten alongside of the street. So these issues have to do with Black Lives Matters or advocacy for police. They have things to do with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, or is that right? What does a Christian think about all those issues? My take on all those things is let's love Jesus with all our heart, and let's help as many people as we possibly can, in any way we possibly can. And so for me, that's helping people in every single feasible way. This ministry that I'm the president of started by helping gang members in the inner city that the society was saying they're deadbeats, they're worthless, they're scum, they need to be thrown into jail. That's, to some degree, we started this ministry with an evangelistic heart. We want to see those people come to know Jesus, but it was also a social justice issue of seeing these young people, rather than just being thrown into a prison system, locked away, and maybe ending up there for the rest of their life, if not overdosing or committing suicide, if they ever get out. But the social justice issue of righting what's wrong, and again, going back to the prophets of the Old Testament, that's exactly what their heart was. It was a heart after God. It was the David's heart of saying, I'm a man after God's own heart, but it was also see things made different because of our impact. The kingdom impact on the earth will not just make the individual different, but it'll make society different, and that's what social justice is.
I'm glad you mentioned that with the origins of World Challenge, and isn't that indeed what you've continued to do, and now you're into feeding orphans and taking care of widows in all parts of the world, correct? What other kinds of work is World Challenge involved in?
I think one of the most important things we've seen take place in the last decade has been a transition from something that we continue to do, but we've added a new element, and that is continue to care for the poor, those who can't care for themselves. But one of the difficulties I saw is we would, after doing this for 20, 30 years, I'd go back to the same village in Africa, for example, and see the exact same perpetuation of existential poverty. It existed the same way. The individual was helped temporarily, but the problem was not fixed. And so about 10 years ago, we started looking at solutions to poverty. And again, that's just, to me, as a social justice issue. We're looking at the individual. We want to see them to come to know Jesus, but we're also looking at the community. What can make that community better? I'm a father. I have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. And whenever I go into a setting like that, I always think, that could be my son. That could be my granddaughter. I don't want to see them living that kind of lifestyle. But as a father, I don't want somebody knocking on my door every day and saying to me, here's your food supply for your children today. And my children seeing that and saying, hey, look, the friendly neighborhood missionary brought us food. Here you go, kids. I want to provide for my kids. And so I translated that into what I would like to see happen in some of these developing countries that we're working in, saying, I want the single mom who has 4 children, I want her to be able to live in a certain way that she can provide for her own children. So we started helping people find ways to get jobs, find ways to develop an economy of their own through farming, through all kinds of different methodologies. And we've seen poverty. Northern Uganda is an example. I've been told there's about 180,000 people now that have, at one time, were living below the level of poverty, who are now living a thriving life. Things have been changed. So spiritually, they've met Jesus Christ. Physically, their life is turned around. Financially, their families totally turned around. The kids are not sick anymore because they learned some simple things like washing their hands and eating off clean utensils. Some of the simplest things that are in the heart of God can help change society.
The blessings that come from knowing God.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That's good news.
Gary, thanks for that insight. It's good to hear.
Appreciate it.